Hello, and welcome to the CSS News Civil War Interpretive Center. My name is Matt Young, and I am the site manager. And today I'm going to be talking kind of generically about Confederate ironclads and the ironclad in North Carolina. First of all, when the Civil War began, the South was vastly outnumbered. The Confederacy, especially in terms of the Navy, had nothing. It had to build it almost entirely from scratch. The North had about 45 ships to start the war and would end the war with over 700. So the Union Navy really built up quickly. The Confederate Secretary of the Navy, former Senator Stephen Mallory, saw the need for river defense, and he learned from the Crimean War in the 1850s that a armored floating battery in harbors was really good protection. But with the advancement of the steam engine, now you could have armored batteries that moved, and that's what an ironclad became. In the South, they were wooden ships with iron plating on the top for protection, and then usually cannons on the inside. In North Carolina, 3 ironclads were authorized to be constructed in eastern North Carolina, and there was an additional 3 that were built in Wilmington. The first ship, the first Confederate ironclad in North Carolina was the CSS North Carolina. It was actually built where the USS North Carolina, the World War II battleship, is today in Wilmington. She unfortunately was built with substandard wood. She didn't have any protection below the waterline, and because she was exposed to seawater and salt water, the woodworms got her, and she kind of rotted from the inside out. So the North Carolina didn't really do what she was intended to do. The next up was the CSS Raleigh. The Raleigh was a fully functional Confederate ironclad, underpowered, as most of them were. She escorted a blockade runner out past Fort Fisher, and then when she turned around to come back up the Cape Fear River, the tide was going out. She ran aground, the water came out from underneath her, and her keel, or her backbone, snapped. And the Confederacy lost the Raleigh. The last Confederate ironclad to be built in Wilmington was the CSS Wilmington. It was about 95% complete when the Union captures the town in February of 1865. As for the other 3 ironclads in eastern North Carolina, the first one is the CSS Albemarle. We'll talk about that in a second. The other one was built on the Tar River, but it was destroyed in a Union cavalry raid. And then the last one is our ship, the CSS News. So let's talk for a second about the CSS Albemarle. The Albemarle was a wooden ship on the bottom, iron plating on the top. It had the exact same plans as the ship we have, the CSS News. They were sister ships in most respects. But the problem with Confederate ironclads was that they were vulnerable, but they were vulnerable underneath the waterline, underneath that iron protection on the outside. And the Union took advantage of that in form of commando raids. Commando raid led by Commander William Cushing led an attack that destroyed the Albemarle. And here you can see a photograph taken after the Albemarle's destruction of the CSS Albemarle, and you can see this iron plating all on the top surface here. There's men standing cheering on what remains of the ship. You can see most of it is underwater, and that's because this was destroyed with a torpedo, basically a bomb on the end of a stick. They got it really close, stuck it below the waterline, big explosion just on the wooden hull. It wasn't protected by iron plate under the waterline. The water rushes in and the ship sinks. And here you have the Albemarle. And there you have a mock-up of the torpedo that destroyed her. All of this on permanent exhibit here at the CSS News Civil War Interpretive Center in Kinston, North Carolina.